And the Horror of Babylon is brought to you by our patrons, Abigail the First, Mother of Dragons, Breaker of Chains,
and Logan, the Full Metal Patron.
This podcast is not suitable for children or those who are easily disturbed. Spoiler warning for whatever is in the title of this episode.
And now for the obligatory socials. Please like, share and subscribe. Follow Daniel at DStarSick on Twitter. Follow Ryan at Darth Damio on the Bluebird app. You can find the podcast on Twitter at HorrorPod69. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Slasher and Goodreads. Become part of the Disturbed community by asking for the Facebook group and Discord links. Send dick pics to the Horror of Babylon podcast at gmail.com. Support the show at patreon.com/thehorrorofbabylon. In closing, you can let your friends know that the Horror of Babylon is available on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Audible and all other major podcast apps.
Welcome to episode 50 of the Horror of Babylon. I am Ryan, and with me as always is Daniel. Say hi, Daniel.
Hi, Daniel.
And I forgot to say, we are talking about 2015's Victor Frankenstein. Overall thoughts, this movie is not perfect.
Not perfect.
I think I can honestly say I enjoyed it. There are some low lows, though.
There are some low lows.
And I'll say, particularly for me, I had a hard time with the beginning.
Yeah.
Just something about Daniel Radcliffe as a hunchback clown doctor. Which is like, what? But I think it got better as it went.
That is a premise sort of confused me. I'm like,
yeah.
I was watching the beginning of that. I'm like, are they going to have Igor built the Frankenstein? Is that what we're leaning towards?
Partially.
Yeah.
The vampire's a pure myth, superstition.
I may be able to bring you proof that the superstition of yesterday can become the scientific reality of today.
Okay, so let's do background. This film was released November 11th, 2015. It's not an adaptation of the novel. The conceit is that this is an adaptation of other adaptations. As you go through this movie, I noticed a lot of Easter eggs and nods to other Frankenstein movies.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I have some notes on some of those. The director was Paul McGuigan, who is mostly a TV director. He directed episodes of Sherlock.
Haven't seen.
You haven't seen Sherlock?
Not the show, no.
Wow. That is... Wow. Okay. I'm shook. Cage.
Haven't seen.
I haven't seen Luke Cage either. I watched the first season of Daredevil and the first season of Jessica Jones, and I liked both, but I just haven't...
Same. I liked both.
Mm-hmm.
It was just a lot at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And then I go on to watch just South Park as background noise over and over again. And
he also directed episodes of the Netflix Dracula miniseries from 2020.
Very bad. My least favorite Dracula adaptation.
Wow. That's... And it was written by Max Landis, who wrote the Will Smith movie Bright, which was the Netflix movie that he did, and Shadow in the Cloud with Chloe Grace Moretz. This movie was a box office bomb. It grossed $34.2 million. The budget was $40 million.
Okay, so you double that, needs to make at least $80 million to break. It lost almost $50 million.
Yeah. This movie, at one point, held the record for the lowest opening gross in a movie that opened in over 2,500 theaters. It no longer has that record.
What has that record now? We can look that up later.
I did. It was a romantic comedy that I didn't know offhand.
Was it Bros?
No, it wasn't Bros. I still want to see that. I haven't seen that yet. Similar to Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, of that $34.2 million it made, only 5.8 was in the United States and North America.
Oh, what happened?
I think that... So here's my thought. So both of these did better in foreign markets. I'm assuming mostly Europe. Can Americans not appreciate this story?
Well, I mean, look how much like the original Universal one made, but...
Right. But is there a successful modern film adaptation of this story?
I don't think so.
Since that point, since Universal, that era ended, do Americans just not care if it's not a vampire or a werewolf? Like, why is Frankenstein less popular than vampires?
I'd be interested in, like, studying that. Because it could be the marketing. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's the star power. Because, I mean, Daniel Radcliffe did good in Harry Potter. But how does Daniel Radcliffe do, like, box office-wise in all his other movies? So far, it hasn't been good from what we've watched for the podcast.
He has had some success in other movies, but obviously nothing that compares to Harry Potter. But, I mean, really nothing does.
Yeah.
Like we were talking about earlier with other people, like, he'll be defined by that role for the rest of his life.
It's unfortunate, because I think he's actually my dream cast for Victor Frankenstein.
Yeah, I think he's a great actor, and I think this movie is strange, but I think he does a good job with what he has in this movie.
He does a good job with the strange.
Yeah. I don't think he's the best performance in this movie, but we'll save that for later.
Yeah.
You might disagree with me, but we'll get to that.
I don't disagree with you, but I think he's held back by, like, what his role is.
The writer, Max Landis, wrote this in response to the Rotten Tomatoes score of this movie. This quote sums up why I don't like Rotten Tomatoes. Rotten Tomatoes breaks down entire reviews into the word yes or the word no, making criticism binary in a destructive and arbitrary way.
Yeah. And now fanboys use it to attack each other.
Yeah, and so. You can't, like, yes, you can ask me, do you like a movie or do you not like a movie? And it's hard for me to say yes or no, because there's, even like these two movies, there's so much I like and dislike about both. Mm-hmm. Like, it's really hard to just break it down and make it binary like that.
And that's that. Another story in the classic, infallible 3-act structure. Good enough for Aristotle, good enough for The Simpsons.
Mr. Sislak, I have a feeling there's going to be one more act to this story.
Well, I'm not hanging around for that. 4 acts.
One of the other conceits of this movie is it tries to do for Frankenstein what Robert Downey Jr. did for Sherlock Holmes.
I agree. This movie reminded me of Sherlock Holmes.
The whole way through.
And it was even, like, shot in a similar fashion, and, like, even things like lighting and costuming, it's all very Robert Downey Jr. Sherlock Holmes-esque.
It tries to make a more comic book version of a 19th century story. Mm-hmm. It takes a 19th century setting, and it puts essentially, like, modern people who speak modern, they're smart asses to each other, they're quips, they go back and forth. And aside from that, the reinvention of Igor and Victor's relationship is very Watson and Holmes.
Yep.
In this movie, Victor feels like a Sherlock Holmes character taking in Dr. Watson and kind of into his practice.
Yeah, no, that's an apt description.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
Let's talk about Igor. We already talked about Daniel Radcliffe. We both thought he was good.
Held back by the script a little.
A little. The character itself is kind of a fusion of the creature and Henry.
Yeah, that's 100% what it is.
He's Henry in that he's
the confidant.
He's the confidant, the partner, the friend. Somebody who cares about Victor, and maybe Victor cares about him, but ultimately Victor only cares about himself, so...
Very egocentric.
But he's also the creature in that...
Always challenging him.
This movie, unlike all other adaptations, is more about the creation of the monster. The monster doesn't come about till the end.
Yeah, like the last, 10 minutes?
Yeah. The two main themes of the Frankenstein novel, I would say, are who is the true monster, Victor or the creature, and playing God. Mm-hmm. And this movie focuses on the playing God theme almost exclusively.
Yeah, a lot.
To the point where the creature is not a character. Mm-hmm. He's just a set piece at the end of the movie.
He's the final boss.
Yeah.
He's the Dark Souls boss.
But Igor is really kind of fills the creature's role to be Victor's parallel.
Yeah, to challenge him. Even on an intellectual level, he's like how the monster intellectually challenged is Victor on ethics in the book. That's what Igor does the entire movie.
Yeah, that's really smart.
Every once in a while I am. It's rare.
I like all of that a lot.
Yeah, no, that's all great.
The opening of this movie is just really strange.
It's a hard sell.
It opens with Igor in the circus, which honestly is a logical origin story for Igor. But so you have Daniel Radcliffe, which is he's a very attractive man, and he's hunched over on all fours, and he's wearing this terrible wig.
Yeah.
Terrible wig.
Just grow your hair out for the scene, buddy.
And he's in clown face paint, and he's explaining his origin. And oh, by the way, I'm also the doctor.
Yeah.
I'm a physician. Which
I learned from reading random books.
Upon reflection, I like that they're trying to do a theme that people are more than what they seem.
Yeah.
In the moment, watching the movie, it's just all a lot to swallow, like right there in the first 5 minutes.
You know what really hurts that theme? Taking away his deformity.
Yeah.
That's one of the and that's early in the movie, but that was one of the parts where I checked out. I was like, you are sort of setting up this I'm more than just the hunchback thing. Then you make him literally not a hunchback.
I wanted to mention this real quick. The guy who plays Henry in Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, he plays Quasimodo in Disney's The Hunchback of Notre Dame.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I know. I just thought that was cool. I wanted to mention that. Just thought that was sweet.
Yeah, that is cool.
And he also does in the sequel, the direct-to-VHS sequel.
Yeah. I was about to say direct-to-DVD, but I forgot how old we are.
Yeah, exactly. As I said, it gets better as it goes. I think the strength of this movie is Igor and Victor's relationship and their chemistry.
Yeah.
I thought that Daniel Radcliffe and James McAvoy were really good together. I really would like to see them in another movie.
I'd almost like to see them just with the roles reversed.
Yeah, I would see that.
Yeah.
Or just, not even necessarily Igor, but
or Henry.
Victor and Henry, or Victor and the Creature, or something. This might be my controversial opinion. I thought that this Victor was the most true adaptation of the character that we have gotten from all of these.
He's at the very least the closest since the 1931.
Well, even the 1931 tries to make him more sympathetic.
Yeah, this starts off really good.
Yeah. In this
is pretty consistent.
This movie, they in no way try to make him, except for kind of towards the end with his finding out about his brother.
Yeah.
But he's an egotistical, maniacal asshole the entire movie, and that doesn't change.
And that's kind of how I picture Victor, even though, like, when you get the story from his perspective, I'm such a tragic guy. Mm-hmm. But when you're reading it, he's smarter than all his professors. Mm-hmm. He knows better than his dad. Dad tells him, don't waste your time reading about alchemy.
And they adapt that into this movie.
Yeah.
Not in the same way that it happens in the book, but they actually take the time to insert that important part of the book into this movie.
I don't think it might be a controversial opinion from both of us, but I agree with you.
Yeah.
This is Victor Frankenstein. This is how I picture him, how he actually is, as opposed to how he would tell the story.
Yeah.
Which I think would also make for an interesting adaptation. I don't know how you would do that, where he's telling the story and he's trying to come off as sympathetic, but you see how he actually is.
That would be hard, but interesting.
That might work for a comic book.
The parts that really sold me are the parts where he's abusing Igor, and then Igor just continually goes back to him.
Yeah.
Because it's just a true abusive relationship, and Victor never redeems himself.
It's a relationship with a narcissist.
Yeah. And there's no point where, like, Victor, like, tries to take a bullet for Igor and redeems himself. He's just an asshole.
I literally babysit narcissists for a living. And this is very true to form.
And he never learns from his mistakes until it's too late, which is the same as the book.
I agree. I think that we're on the same page so far.
Well, maybe here's where you disagree with me, but I think he's the best performance in the movie.
No, I agree. But again, I only agree with that because I think Daniel Radcliffe is held back by the role he has.
Yes, I will concede that.
Yeah.
So let's take a detour here for a minute. This is the second Daniel Radcliffe movie we've reviewed, and the second James McAvoy movie we reviewed. Real quick, how do you like Daniel's performance here as compared to Horns, and how do you like James's performance as compared to It Chapter 2?
Okay. So I like Daniel Radcliffe's performance better in this movie.
Agreed.
God, compared to It Chapter 2, I'm probably biased because of how much I hate that movie.
Yeah.
I also think that he did a better job because he's actually portraying Victor. Mm-hmm. So I think he also did a better job here.
I agree with both. I don't think he does a bad job in It Chapter 2, but he doesn't feel like Bill to me.
I think it's the opposite problem with Daniel Radcliffe. In It Chapter 2, the script's holding him back.
Yeah, exactly.
As opposed to this, where it lets him play Victor Frankenstein.
I really am becoming of the opinion that I really like James McAvoy when he gets to take a character that I really like and take them in kind of a dark place, because Charles Xavier, if you read a lot of X-Men comics, he's a hero, but he's also a really controversial character.
Yeah.
Because he takes children, he trains them to fight for his political gains, and then he sends them out into battle, and sometimes they die. And there's a lot of darkness.
And then Cyclops tries to continue that in Schism.
I love Schism. I
love Schism too, but I think that's one of the first times where I was like on Team Cyclops and you were on Team Wolverine.
I'm totally on Team Wolverine. I think in those X-Men movies, you get to see a little bit more of that dark side of Charles Xavier, and I love Patrick Stewart, but as opposed to Patrick Stewart's Charles Xavier, where it's just he's blowjobs and lollipops.
Yeah, he's doing the he's Martin Luther King and Malcolm X.
He's the Martin Luther King of mutants.
Yeah. That's the comparison people, or even Stan Lee, used.
Yeah.
For Magneto and Xavier was one's Martin Luther
and the other's Malcolm X. Yeah, that totally makes sense.
And in the early movies, that's what you get.
Yeah.
But in those like prequel movies, you kind of get some of the nuance there.
I think this is a whole nother rant, but you and I both think those movies are underrated. At least Apocalypse. I still don't understand why people...
I don't get the hate to Apocalypse. I still haven't seen Dark Phoenix, so...
I think it's very similar to Apocalypse. However, I prefer... That's a whole nother thing.
Yes.
Well, that could be...
Bonus episode.
That could be a pre-show or something.
Yeah.
Some nods to the other adaptations. When they're designing the monster, Victor's like, I want him to have a flat head. Why? I just think it's cool.
Yeah, just imagine it.
It's obviously a reference to Boris Karloff.
Yeah.
Lorelai, she calls Victor Dr. Frankenstein, and he immediately snaps back, it's Frankenstein, which is obviously a reference to Young Frankenstein.
I love it.
Yeah, that was great. The bellows that he has in his lab really reminded me of the bellows in Kenneth Branagh's lab in Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. Yeah. I'm sure there are more, but those are the ones that like jumped out to me.
I mean, also, yeah, so the movie was just kind of chock full of references, which also kind of gave it that comic booky feel.
Yeah. And it also has like a lot of like connections to other very British properties, especially in the casting. So obviously Daniel Radcliffe and Harry Potter. The guy who played the inspector is Moriarty in Sherlock.
Ooh.
And his constable is in the Fantastic Beasts movies.
How did you feel the inspector in this movie?
I liked his character. Oh, that was another one. He ends up with a mechanical arm.
Yeah.
And the cop in Young Frankenstein has a mechanical arm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought it was good because I've never seen that in any other adaptation where there's a purely religious character who opposes Victor on religious grounds, because if you think about it, I think we actually talked about this in our episode on the novel, Victor's views can't really sync up with Christian ideology.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that there would be a character, and it makes even more sense that this is a Law and Order character who totally opposes him.
What about the monster design? I like that it was tall.
I think the design was fine.
Yeah.
The CG wasn't great.
Yeah. I like that it was big, because I've been wanting an 8-foot tall one forever. Other than that, I thought it was sort of basic.
Yeah, but it was okay because that wasn't what the movie was about.
Yeah.
What I liked more was Gordon.
Yeah.
Granted, when Gordon came alive, the CG was terrible, but the practical effect of Gordon on the table was amazing. The part where they shock him and all the flies come out of his chest, I wanted to vomit.
And I still thought that, I thought all of those scenes were cool, when they were experimenting with, the tiny parts, and then the monkey, Gordon, and then, just stuff like that. Mm-hmm. I thought all of that was super interesting. Yeah. We're building up to the monster, because that kind of makes sense. You start small, you start with, can I make these eyeballs, follow light?
Yeah, I like that this was It was less about the monster, and it was more about the creation of the monster and the process you get to be to that point.
I almost think that they should have just not made the monster in this movie and it all be about the process, and then you leave off with, like, Victor goes off to make the monster or something like that.
Or what if it failed?
Yeah.
And, like, the last scene was just, like, the same thing where, like, everything's falling apart and all the other people die, but Daniel Radcliffe escapes, and then he gets the letter, and oh, Victor's alive too, but the monster never actually came to life. Because I thought that was kind of a weak point where I liked the monster, but now we have to have, like, this cheesy comic book fight.
It's the final boss of a Resident Evil game.
It fit the movie.
It's the tyrant.
Yeah.
You gotta use your magnum, otherwise you're not gonna do enough damage.
And my Koontz is in that scene. Do you have any other thoughts before we...
Oh, no, I think we covered it.
Oh my god, are you Stephen King? No, I'm Dean Koontz. Oh.
And I'm going to start with my Koontz. My Koontz is just a quote.
Yeah.
Eagle! 2 hearts! Because he forgot to stab both hearts. He only stabbed one of them. Oh yeah, right, there's 2. I should have stabbed both hearts.
I'm just looking at, like, the noise on that when you did the quote. That's great.
Eagle! 2 hearts! Which is funny, because I really like the scene where they're designing it, and he's just like, oh, well, we'll just give him 2 lungs. And we'll give him 2 hearts. I thought that was cool, but then
because it makes sense because of the size of the thing that you're making.
Exactly. Yeah. He's like, he's our man. We're making him. We can make him however we want. That was cool.
If we're doing Koontz first, my Koontz was honestly just the whole circus beginning.
Yeah, it was rough.
I thought it was kind of rough. Mm-hmm. And I think that might explain some of the box office. Like, if you're doing word of mouth, a lot of times what sucks you in is the beginning of a movie.
Yeah.
You can have a weak end or a weak middle, but having a weak start.
And honestly, 9 times out of 10, if I have an issue with one particular act of a movie, it's almost always the third act.
Mm-hmm.
It's rare that the beginning of a movie is my least favorite part, but it definitely is for this movie.
Yeah.
But, of course, I had to watch it for the podcast and sat through it and ended up being better than I thought. I think that the middle act is the best part.
I did check out of this movie a lot less.
Yeah.
So...
better than Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, but still not perfect, but somewhat enjoyable.
I think there's entertainment value in this.
I liked it.
Yeah. I would say that I definitely liked it more than that. This isn't going to be in my bottom 5.
No. Koontz.
You mean King? Because we just did Koontz.
Yeah, I mean King. My King is just James McAvoy and him just going insane.
That is also my King.
Yeah, he was just
I think
awesome.
that he was a great Victor Frankenstein.
Yeah.
I loved his ego. I especially like the dinner party.
Yes.
She thinks the brain is pink.
Babies in vats. Babies, tell me, how can we just get the sperm to swim to something else?
What are you, a fool? He reminded me of, like, God, probably me in college, like a fedora tipping atheist.
Yeah.
That just has to actually everything.
Actually everybody.
Yeah,
exactly.
But to the extreme.
He has a cop in his house who is threatening to come back with a warrant and tear his life to pieces, burn his life to the ground, and he still has to try and troll the guy.
He's like, excuse me, sir. Have you considered the fact that maybe you're stupid?
I'm like, Victor, just shut up. Rankings. I'll go first this time.
Yeah. A little harder to place for me.
I'm going to put it below Firestarter 2.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's kind of a similar kind of ridiculousness, but not as funny or ridiculous as Firestarter 2.
Yeah.
And above Frankenstein 1910. Obviously, like, Frankenstein is 1910 is the more significant and the better.
It's historically important.
Yeah, but not as enjoyable.
Yeah.
So that movie scared the shit out of me, and fuck it.
I think that it still has the best creation scene.
Yeah, no, I agree.
I'm still waiting for a movie to outdo that.
Real quick, before you rank it, we didn't actually talk about the creation scene. Most of the adaptations we've done have done different things. Edison one did like the pottery kiln thing.
It's a golem.
Yeah. James Whale did the iconic lightning. Junji Ito did like the chemistry with like the mason jars. Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, Kenneth Branagh did the fucking
the
eels.
80s rock video.
And then
the
this
amniotic fluid.
This one, he used lightning, but it was, I guess it was more comic booky, more outrageous.
That's how I would describe it. It was maybe too over the top.
Yeah.
But
it is kind of an over the top movie.
Yeah. Alrighty, let's see here. I also liked it better than 1910. I'm probably going to put it right below Hellraiser 2022. That movie just personally appeals to my sort of aesthetic more than it does you.
And above Pearl.
Yeah. Pearl, I was honestly kind of let down by, considering how much I liked X.
I liked Pearl a little more than X just because it was different.
These are our hot takes. This is what will make us not be taken seriously.
So I've actually seen, like, I don't spend a lot of time on social media, but when I do, it's usually on the Horror Babylon account, so it's in, like, the horror community.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of posts about Pearl recently.
Yeah, people love it. I think it's good. I definitely don't think it's as good as X. And maybe just because, like, the grunginess of X appeals to me than, like, the Wizard of Oz look.
Yeah.
That Pearl had.
I understand that.
I think that Mia Goth is a fantastic actress.
She is. I really want to see her in more.
Like, that smile scene at the end of Pearl's worth it.
Her monologue at the end of Pearl to the to like her sister-in-law. Yeah, that I think she's an actress to watch for sure. Homework. Across the two films, we see at least 5 performers from the wizarding world. What other Harry Potter or Fantastic Beast actors would you like to cast as Frankenstein characters?
I want Hagrid as the monster. I don't know the actor's name. I want Dumbledore as Baron von Frankenstein.
Which Dumbledore?
Not the original, like the one that was in the most movies.
Okay.
Because the other one's dead. I want Hermione as Elizabeth. Just because that would get you in the theater.
Oh, yeah, it would.
And I still want Daniel Radcliffe as Victor Frankenstein.
I want Emma Watson as Victor.
You're going to do a gender swap.
Well, we can keep Elizabeth as a... So Elizabeth can be the girl who plays Luna.
Oh, that's great. I want to see your version.
Yeah. And then the creature is going to be played by Alan Rickman. Snape. So since he's actually dead, so we'll get to reanimate him.
Yeah. I forgot he died.
I know. It's so sad. In my version, there's going to be a love triangle between the creature Victor and Elizabeth.
That's great.
Yeah.
Your version sounds way better. Let's do your version.
Daniel Radcliffe will be Henry.
Okay, that's acceptable.
We'll just slowly work Daniel Radcliffe through several movies until he plays every character. Oh, Ernest. I'm going to have Ernest in mind.
Yeah.
And Ernest will, the guy who played Ron, he'll be Ernest because...
Why not?
Yeah, because why not? All right, there you go.
He shows up for a scene and then leaves.
Yeah. Okay. And then our question for the listeners, of all the adaptations, regardless if we've covered them or not, who's your favorite Victor Frankenstein? And who's your favorite creature? Definitely reach out to our socials and let us know. And then for further reading, if you haven't seen Guy Ritchie's Sherlock Holmes with Robert Downey Jr. and Jude Lawson,
100%.
If you liked Victor Frankenstein, definitely watch those movies for sure. 100%. We are done with Frankenstein. We've talked about bonus episodes on The Bride of Frankenstein and Young Frankenstein. You might see that.
If we get behind on books, we could even do them as episodes.
Yeah. So you might see that in the future. I'm sure at some point we'll do more Frankenstein, but our official Frankenstein coverage has now ended.
I'm getting... You know how I have the black and white Wolfman figure? I'm getting the Boris Karloff black and white figure.
What are those figures called that you like?
Which ones?
The fancy ones.
The NECA ones?
Yeah. Did you know they have those at Target?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
That's where I get most of mine.
They have the TMNT Universal Monster crossover ones. Those are so cool.
Those are super cool. Your Christmas present was almost one of those. I was a Pennywise.
That would be cool.
Yeah.
That would be cool. So, I'm very happy with my Christmas present.
I try.
Upcoming on the Horror Babylon, as I said, we are done with Frankenstein for now. Next week, we are going to do the short story Dracula's Guest. And I'm going to go ahead and tell you this. Daniel doesn't even know. I don't think it's going to take us that long to discuss that short story. So we are also going to be playing some trivia in that episode.
Fun.
I get to...
Embarrass me?
Yeah. Thank you for recording.
I love it. I wouldn't rather be anywhere else.
And thank you to our patrons, Abigail, the first Breaker of Chains, Mother of Dragons, and
Logan, the Full Metal Patron.
Stay tuned for our socials and stay scary.
Stay scary, everyone.
And now for the obligatory socials. Please like, share, and subscribe. Follow Daniel at DStarSick on Twitter. Follow Ryan at Darth Damio on the Bluebird app. You can find the podcast on Twitter at HorrorPod69. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Slasher, and Goodreads. Become part of the Disturbed community by asking for the Facebook group and Discord links. Send dick pics to the Horror of Babylon podcast at gmail.com. Support the show at patreon.com/the Horror of Babylon. In closing, you can let your friends know that The Horror of Babylon is available on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Audible, and all other major podcast apps. Stay scary.